This is Fit to Succeed in partnership with NordicFitnessEducation.com with hosts Ben Pratt. Thanks for joining us.
I don't recall ever my friends coming to knock on my door one day and go, Darryl, do you want to come out and play? And me saying, you know what, I've got DOMS, I've got muscle soreness. So, we played out too hard yesterday. So I probably spend more time in my local park, and I would say that's my gym, right? That's my play space, that's my playground.
Hello and welcome to another Fit to Succeed podcast. I'm really excited today to bring you a fantastic guest. His name is Darryl Edwards. Darryl, thank you for joining us today.
Cheers, Ben. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, Darryl has come from an investment banking background, and from that, he felt that he needed to make a change in his career, and he moved into the fitness space. And I'm going to allow Darryl to kind of unfold for you how or what motivated him to shift from that very traditional blue-collar background into the health and fitness space that he now works within. Darryl.
Yeah, so I was a technologist within investment banking, and a very lucrative career, doing extremely well, but I was suffering from, I'd almost say, early onset chronic lifestyle disease.
Right.
I was very sedentary, 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, highly stressed environment, and I had an annual health check. I had a series of annual health checks, and 1 year I was told I was pre-diabetic. I had a really poor lipid profile, cholesterol profile. I was hypertensive, really high blood pressure, and a host of other issues. And the recommendation by my doctor was to take a series of meds, statins for my cholesterol, beta blockers for my blood pressure. I was anemic, so take some supplementation for that. Take something to lower your blood pressure. And I was like, whoa, that seems pretty radical an approach. But it was like, either you do this or you're really, you might have a heart attack within the next 5 to 10 years. You're likely to suffer in the long term if you don't do this. Are there any other alternatives? No. Other drugs. How long do you need to take the drugs for? Pretty much until the end of your days. What about the side effects? Don't worry about the side effects. We'll give you something else if we encounter a side effect. So I was like, this doesn't sound right. There must be something else that I can do. And one of the things that I thought about was about becoming more physically active. I was like, things aren't right. I had a very high body fat percentage. I was skinny fat. So I kind of looked okay in my suit on my way to work, but something wasn't right. I was very physically inactive. So I started a workout program. I started thinking about the sort of diet that I should be following to accompany that. And within a month or two, my blood test results were either normalized or becoming optimal.
Oh, wow.
So it was a pretty incredible transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much in how I looked, but in terms of my health profile. So I was no longer pre-diabetic. My blood pressure came down to like 110 over 70. I was no longer anemic because I started eating red meat, which I'd been avoiding previously. I started eating a paleo template diet. I believe that there's a diet that we should be that's very appropriate for humans to be eating. I increased the amount of fat that I was eating because I was eating a low-fat diet previously, and I was suffering from low testosterone, for example, and not realizing that actually by eating a low-fat diet, I'm probably contributing to not being able to correctly build those kind of the steroid hormones like testosterone. So it was a remarkable experience of learning much more about nutrition, learning about what my body should be doing in terms of movement and physical activity, and the health results that came out of that. I avoided the medication. My doctor was like, who have you been to see? Because, where are you getting your drugs from? Because you haven't been getting them prescribed by me. And I'm like, well, this is all lifestyle.
So what sort of time frame, Darryl, are we talking about here? From when you got diagnosed with those concerns to when you actually were able to go back and be retested?
So it was around, I had my initial tests in 30 days, and over about a 90-day period.
Wow.
So there were some tests that the doctor said, look, there's no point taking these. So, for example, hemoglobin A1C, which is like a 3-month window on your blood glucose. He was like, you need to take this every 3 months to have, a real indication of what the changes are. Fasting blood glucose you can take on a daily basis. So that was like, let's take it in 30 days. So yeah, there were a series of tests within a 3-month period whereby you could definitely see the difference between the initial test and post-intervention, lifestyle intervention. But myself and my doctor weren't convinced at that point. It was like, let's continue to test. Mm-hmm. And my doctor had concerns about my diet. He had concerns about what I was doing from a training point of view. And he said, and I said to him, really, if there are any changes that you see based on what I'm doing now, negative changes, I'm happy to do something else. Right. But until that time, this is the pathway I'm going to be on. So, I for example, I stopped eating dairy, for example, was one of the changes. I stopped eating wheat. Mm-hmm. And so my doctor was like, where are you going to get your fiber from? Where are you going to get your calcium from not having dairy, So there were genuine concerns. But based on my change in health state, I was like, well, if there's nothing detrimental and everything you're telling me is kind of positive, then why? I don't need to question this. This seems like the direction I should be going in. And that was now around sort of 2003, 4. Okay. Was when I started making those changes. So it's a significant period of time, and I've been fortunate enough to have been retested every year, every couple of years, just to see that everything is still on track. And then probably after 3 to 6 months, there was also kind of an aesthetic difference as well. So I started to drop that, in visceral fat. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was no longer a skinny fat individual. I started to build some lean muscle mass, and there was then a physical change. Because I was skinny fat, you couldn't tell that I wasn't healthy looking at me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I still looked good in my suits. I wasn't visibly overweight or obese, but based on my body fat percentage, I had very high levels of body fat.
So you had low muscle mass and
yes,
more of your weight was being made up of body fat. I'm with you.
Yes, for sure. So I was close to 27, 28% body fat. As a toffee individual, thin on the outside, fat on the inside.
So your BMI scores would have been fine, but when you actually look at the percentage, it was too high.
Yeah, it was too high. And now, coming close to sort of 15 years or so later, now my BMI, I'd be classified as overweight according to my BMI. I'm like 26 BMI, but my body fat percentage is, hovering around a sort of 10%, 11% mark. So, again, it shows that can be an issue with BMI. Usain Bolt is actually overweight according to his BMI. Wow. So
that's impressive when he's so tall.
Yeah, exactly.
You're pretty tall,
but I'm an inch off him in terms of height. But yeah, so it just goes to show that we do need more reliable markers of and tests sometimes. And for myself, BMI I can't really rely upon. Sure. But yes,
I'm intrigued there, Darryl, in what you've sort of said, because particularly you sort of timestamped the years 2002, 2003 when this was happening. Now, the paleo movement now, if you were to Google paleo or anything about paleo, it comes up pretty high. There's an awful lot of content on the internet now, but 2002, I mean, that was quite a long time before this movement really got some kind of traction on the internet. It sounds like you were one of the earlier adopters. Who was it, or what individuals' information was it that got you on that path?
Yeah, there was nothing really online at that time. There was the Paleo Diet, which is what I read by Lauren Cordain. Mm-hmm. So I had his book on my bookshelf around that time. I think it was only released. It was released around 2001, 2, something like that. So it was a shelf help book for a while. I bought it. Put it on the shelf. Didn't look at it. Mm-hmm. But I remember when I glanced at it, it was like, this sounds interesting, but what do I have in common with a caveman? So that was my initial kind of skepticism, like, this is the 21st century, not really sure this really relates to me. But there was something about the messaging about going back to basics, about the fact that we evolved under a set of conditions that meant, in the 21st century, by eating differently, by moving differently, we suffer the consequences. Our DNA, our genes, can't cope with a sedentary, fast food, artificial processed food environment. It struggles to do so, and the side effect of that will be ill health. So that was enough of a convincer for me. I wasn't sure, is this definitely the diet I should be eating, or what sort of exercise program should I be doing? I didn't really know, but I knew I had to do something radically different, right? I mean, what I was doing was not helping me out. So yeah, it was an initial light bulb moment of, okay, I need to spend more time exploring this. Now, people like Art Devaney, who's known as one of the kind of grandfathers of the paleo movement, he was very much talking about the evolutionary mismatch, one of the earliest individuals to do so, saying that it wasn't just about food, but it was about movement. It was about how you sleep. It was about, your managing stress and your interaction with other humans, so more holistic approach. And then a few years on from that, CrossFit became a big part of that time for me as well, and that kind of functional fitness had a huge impact on me too. So yeah, that was the kind of spark. My curiosity was definitely kind of tweaked to that point. It's like, okay, right, what do I do? How can I improve this? How can I really benefit from this? And after a few more years, I realized I didn't want to continue my career. I wanted to teach others to do something similar to myself. People would be asking me advice, and I'd be like, well, I don't really feel qualified to give you advice. I don't have any nutritional training. I'm not a personal trainer. Let me actually spend some time learning more about this. Let me become a nutritional therapist. Let me become a personal trainer. Let me consider, do I quit my job and do this full time? And that's what I decided to do. So around 2010, 11, I was like, right, I have to leave banking and I want to follow my passions.
Because I think I first met you, I think it was 2012. We met at one of the big fitness events in the UK. I think I remember you coming to some of the sessions that we were delivering, and you were very enthusiastic at that time. And you've gone on and you've developed a quite significant following yourself in that sort of functional fitness, paleo type space. In particular, you have the Primal play method that you've developed, and now you've just recently released your book on animal movement training. When I kind of look at those things and I see where you've come from, it's fantastic to see that journey. But I wonder if we could maybe just focus on those fitness elements for a bit, and maybe you could just explain the underlying key principles behind your fitness philosophy now.
So I suppose when I started out, I was very much into taking the corporate environment that I was from, like a go environment, rewarded based on merit. You work hard, you play hard, you achieve the rewards that you want, right? You receive the rewards you want. So I took that into the gym environment initially, and it was mainly about punishment. It was mainly about how hard can I push myself, how much better am I than my peers, when am I going to be number one on the leaderboard? That's what mattered. But because I have that sort of personality, very competitive, as you can imagine, in working with investment banking, it's a very cutthroat environment. Then taking that into the gym, you do almost anything to beat your peers. I just have to be a winner.
Is that why CrossFit kind of appealed to you? Because there's that competitive side to CrossFit?
For sure. I mean, it appealed to me because I never felt I had I never had a physical background. I was a geek and a nerd. I wasn't a jock. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't great. I wasn't athletic. I wasn't a track and field, star at school or anything like that. I was in the computer room on BBC computers way back when, learning how to program. That was what I was doing. So I felt amazed that I could actually do stuff. Oh my goodness, I can deadlift. I can actually pick up something heavy. I can do double unders. There was these things that I was learning to do that I had no idea was possible. So with that excitement and being able to beat people who had a history, a legacy of fitness where I didn't, I was like, oh wow, I'm amazed by this. Every day was a discovery.
It empowered you.
It empowered me for sure. The downside was I started getting injured on a regular basis. I couldn't deal very well with losing. You know what I mean? Being second, a first place loser, as they say, wasn't a good feeling, wasn't a great feeling. And I started to feel demotivated. You know, if I couldn't work out because I was injured, that was, you know, very depressing. If I was losing on a regular basis, or I hit a plateau on my WODs, I was like, you know, I'm not happy about it either. And so I didn't appreciate that there are limitations, you know, in myself in terms of how I should be approaching my training program. You know, maybe I need more structure, maybe I need less, maybe I need to focus more on the process rather than the end result. And that thought process led me to thinking about, what do I want to do that makes me enjoy movement more? And so the kind of primal, the explosion of kind of primal movement, a more natural movement coming out of functional movement, appealed to me. Mm-hmm. It felt more evolutionary, tied to evolutionary fitness and evolutionary biology, which appealed to me. And it felt an even broader brush of general preparedness than even something like CrossFit. Mm-hmm. So I was like, yeah, this seems, you know, I don't want to have to walk on my hands. That doesn't seem to be that functional. Mm-hmm. You know, doing double unders, yeah, it's improving my, you know, ability to work at high intensity, but arguably, again, how functional is that, you know? Mm-hmm. So that primal movement approach appealed to me a lot more. Mm-hmm. And then once I ventured into that, I still regarded that as a new form of elitism, right? As appealing mainly to those who are really fit, who look great with their shirts off, you know, who could kind of beat their chest and say, look at me, I'm a modern day caveman. Mm-hmm. But the people that I really wanted to help are those who would rather sit on their couch watching Netflix reruns or watching sportsmen and women on TV. You know, and I was like, that's who I want to get involved. And I want to feel as if I could do this until the end of my days. Mm-hmm. So that became Primal Play. When I last thought about when I really enjoyed movement, it was when I was a kid, when I didn't exercise. We just go out and play all day. And playing out all day would mean working pretty hard at times, you know, climbing trees, piggyback carries, playing tag, you know, like making games on the spot. You know, it's like, hey, you know, our goalposts are going to be jumpers, you know, like our cricket stumps are going to be a bread basket. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It's exactly. Like whatever you've got available to you, that's what we're going to use. And if we're bored, we're going to change the game. So, and I don't remember, so I'm, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Rest. I'm going to have a rest period. You know, I need some active recovery today, guys. You know, I don't recall that happening. And so I wanted to recapture some of that as an adult.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
Taking primal movements, instinctive, universal, natural movements, and blending that with play theory became Primal Play and the Primal Play method.
Well, you've kind of alluded to something that's really interesting there, which is when we look at the way people live their lives currently, you know, for a lot of people, perhaps similar to yourself, they're in a job that's relatively sedentary and they're probably traveling or anything like that. So there's huge chunks of the day where they're sedentary, but then they try to address that by then attending the gym and doing very high intensity bouts of exercise to put right hours and hours and hours of sitting around. Now that sounds to me like that sort of modern view, that of traditional gym workout is kind of not what you're getting at. You're getting at sort of integrating true movement into your daily life. Is that what you're?
Yes, for sure. So we know, obviously, if you're sedentary, going to the gym once a day is far better than just being sedentary. We know, you know, the evidence is there. It's overwhelming, the health benefits in being in exercising. But we also know that some of that sedentary time is also really dangerous. Even if you're exercising, if you have very long bouts of sedentary time, it's difficult to undo that by just doing your 30-minute, 45-minute workout. Far better off you breaking up sedentary time with periods of movement and then doing something maybe more high intensity during your day when you have some dedicated time. So getting more movement minutes into your day, having less periods of sedentary time is far more helpful. So when you think about us ancestrally, we were only sedentary after we'd accomplished what we had to get done, i.e. we've built our shelter, you know, we feel safe, we've got some food, now we can rest. If we weren't in that situation, we had to continue to go hunting and gathering for our foods. That was an ongoing pursuit. If we didn't have shelter, we had to make sure that was built. So we're now in an environment where convenience wins out. Our environment is engineered to make us more sedentary. You know, I can literally roll out of bed, walk a few meters to my car, commute to work in a seated position, get into the office, sit down all day, you know, get somebody to get me a sandwich at my desk, and repeat on the way back home. And then maybe maybe decide once I get home, okay, I'm going to get changed and go to the gym to try to undo what you've done. But it's a bit like eating lots of cream cakes all day and then deciding, you know what, I'm going to go and do a quick workout to try and undo this. It takes a lot, as you know, to burn. You know, if you have 2,000 surplus of calories a day and then decide to do an hour's workout, you're probably not going to burn 800, 900 calories at best if you're working at quite a high intensity. So it's very difficult to undo those excesses. So a sedentary lifestyle is another form of excess, the excess of being physically inactive. And so you have to think far more about how can I moderate that activity or inactivity by breaking things up, standing more. So I've got a standing desk, for example. So I stand and I don't just sit. If I'm taking a phone call, I'll use that opportunity to stand and talk rather than just being seated again. So there are things you can do. You're watching television when there's a commercial break. Do some squats for a couple of minutes, you know, do some animal movements, do some crawls. You know, it's not a waste of time. And I think that's what we believe. It's like there's no point doing 2 minutes of exercise because it only really works if you do 30 minutes plus. It all counts. It's all cumulative benefit. Your body will thank you for being re-energized at that moment.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying there is that, you know, when somebody has that short break in the television and they actually get up and do some movement, whilst it might not have an impact on cardiovascular fitness or on strength, it is going to have an impact on posture. It's going to have an impact on joint mobility and how you're moving, how you're feeling. Yeah, so I totally see what you're saying there. Now,
but even so, Ben, if you did 2 minutes of, say, push-ups, then of course it's going to have a benefit on, you know, strength endurance or muscle endurance. So you're right. It's not like I'm going to be doing deadlifts or some, you know, maximal strength efforts, or you know, it's unlikely that I'm going to be doing like, you know, 25, 30 burpees in that 2 minutes or 50 burpees in that 2 minutes. But if you set your mind to it, you could actually do something quite intense, a significant amount of effort within that couple of minutes. And even if you don't, even if, as you say, you're just focusing on posture or just flow-based movement, it's all, you know, I believe movement is cumulative. And so I believe just doing something will give you a benefit over and above you deciding, you know what, I've spent an hour sitting, another 2 minutes of sitting is not going to be it's not going to be any more harmful, right?
Sure, yeah. It's easy to fall into that thought process, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just sort of thinking there that you've, you know, you qualified as a personal trainer. You then kind of, you had this sort of CrossFit concept. You were working in functional. So you were obviously started in the gym environment. But I think as I followed your journey and you then went into, and you worked under the brand Fitness Explorer, there was an awful lot of focus on getting outdoors, using your natural environment. And then now with the idea of Primal Play, I generally see a lot of what you're doing is in groups and in halls and in outdoor spaces.
Yes.
So does that, am I assuming here, have you turned your back kind of on the traditional gym setting generally, or where are you at with that now?
Well, my gym has just become the world around me and the environment around me. So no, I'm not anti-gym, but for some people, it's either, you know, they may not be able to afford the gym. They might actually have the time for the gym. So even when I was going to the gym on a regular basis, I spent more time getting ready to go to the gym. Do you know what I mean? Make sure I've got the right outfit, making sure I've got the right gym bag, got the right training shoes, you know, then my commute to the gym, wherever that was, you know, so then getting changed at the gym and, you know, so I sometimes I felt I was spending more time preparing myself for the gym than actually getting things done.
Yeah, sure.
So most of us are already time, you know, stressed, time
poor,
and time poor. So I feel we can better make our time, you know, time management can be utilized in a more productive fashion to just get stuff done. If I can decide that I can do my workout in my living room and I can be just as productive in that environment as I can be in a gym, why go to the gym?
Sure.
Okay, that isn't always the case. Sometimes you do need specialist equipment. Sometimes you do need specialist coaching. But for many of us, especially those who don't have that love of fitness, who haven't got the bug, then just starting out with what you have in your home is more than good enough. And I took that concept to not just in my home, but also into my local park. That gives me access to pretty much an infinite variety, smorgasbord of equipment. Trees, benches, the grass, the pavement. I can lift logs, there's rocks. I can jump, I can crawl, I can climb, I can piggyback someone, I can fireman carry a friend and go for a sprint. So for me, I feel that some gyms can actually be limiting to in terms of what you can do and what the human body is capable of. And even though I'm no longer the fitness explorer in terms of my branding, I do still feel that exploration of movement is part and parcel of what I want to do. So I just get very easily bored of doing the same things over and over again. I'm like, I want to try something new, different. But at the same time, I recognize that I do want it to be effective. So I don't want it to be aimless. I don't want it to be, let's just roll around in the grass and have fun, because then I'm not going to be improving my cardiovascular fitness. I'm not improving my strength, my skill base around, agility and coordination and balance. So I still feel we need a grounding of kind of exercise science and what we know best about how we can improve our fitness and performance and health, but using play as a mechanism to make it more engaging, instantly gratifying, inherently motivating, sort of intrinsically motivating rather than expecting the outside world to make that happen, or another individual to make that happen. So I've created this ability to become more childlike around movement, not childish, not petulant, but more childlike in terms of experiencing some innocence around the world around me. Like, oh my goodness, there's a tree. What can I do with that tree that I haven't done before? How can I climb it? How can I approach it differently? Why? Look at the feel of textures. Oh my goodness, it's more difficult to do a pull-up here than it is on a bar that's nicely smooth bar, and that I can put chalk onto my hands and wear gloves. It's like, no, gloves off. This is really tough. I can't just use my hands to climb this tree. Maybe I've got to use my legs as well. You know what I'm saying, Ben. So I feel that my gym now has just become the world around me.
Nice.
And that I engage in have become as holistic and as broad as they possibly can be, because I'm interacting with nature. So there were no, as incredible as nature is, we are part of nature. And so if we are part of nature, then the movements that we can engage in are almost infinite as well, are incredibly amazing and enriching.
Well, that's you mentioned there. Sorry, Darryl. You mentioned there about movement, and I'd love to just delve into that a little bit more, because whilst you have sort of painted a picture of lots and lots of variety, which I think is fantastic, one of the traditional views on training is that there should still be structure to what we're doing. And I know, with your background, that you still have structure in what you're doing, and I want the listeners to understand that. So if you're looking at, using the environment around about you, do you have kind of basic movement patterns that you would say, let's factor in some of these types of movements into a play time or a training time?
Yeah, well, I suppose the conditions that I set in terms of structure are making sure that all of the components of fitness that I'm aware of are covered.
Such as?
So for example, I want to be stronger. I want to be faster. I want to be more powerful. I want to be improving my balance and coordination and agility. I want to be improving my response time, and my accuracy, my my endurance and stamina. My muscular endurance, my strength endurance. I mean, my maximal strength, my posture, my transition from one movement to the next. I mean, there's so many flavors of fitness rather than what we just see conventionally. Cardio or resistance is what many of us kind of decide to train. So I'm like the entire rainbow, a well-formed diet, so to speak, is how I like to think about movement. And within that well-structured diet of movement, it's of all intensities. So sometimes my movement should be really, really slow, controlled, mindful, very intentional, right through to very unstructured, very almost undisciplined, like almost do whatever I want to do, to very highly intense, again, focused, high risk of injury if this isn't done correctly, need to focus on movement quality and efficiency. So yeah, I the structure is almost in it being unstructured.
Sure.
and ensuring that if I'm only having fun, right, that isn't good enough. Because me having fun could just be me sitting down, being fed grapes by my partner, right?
Sure.
And you know what I mean, having my feet massaged. That might be fun, but I'm not going to be getting fitter by doing so, right? Me rolling down the grassy hill, might be fun, maybe, and maybe some laughing and joking, but I'm not really going to be improving my fitness by doing so. So I suppose there's a seriousness of play that many adults just don't realize. We think play is superfluous because we only focus on the fun, enjoyment element. And most of the times that we're working out, it isn't fun, right? It's hard work, it's punishing, it can be seen as a chore, but play for kids can be very serious. You know, they visualize, they imagine there are penalties. You know, if they jump over that pit of snakes and they fall in, you know, it's imaginary. But, you know, they'll have a grimace on their face. They'll be panicking. They'll be hyperventilating. They'll be like, oh, my goodness, if I fall in, I'm going to die. I need 10 lives. If I fall in, you need to help me out. So if you watch kids playing, it isn't always fun, you know, outwardly. That fun comes from them creating a bit of an adrenaline rush and then being very serious in terms of visualization. So there are so many lessons we need to learn about being childlike and playing, which isn't just about, oh, look how amazing my 2-year-old, how easy it is for my 2-year-old to squat.
Sure.
Or, you know, look how my kids can have fun with movement because they're laughing when they play. No, most of the time they're not laughing when they play. Most of the times they're deadly serious. They want to learn how to do stuff. I want to learn how to climb. I want to learn how to pick up my older brother, you know, or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they want to do this stuff. They have a desire to move and to learn about the environment. And some of us as adults need to re-engage with that feeling, re-engage with our inner child. So yes, there is a structure because it's important for us to be able to monitor our progress. I may not necessarily keep track of numbers like I used to. I couldn't tell you what my 1 rep max is apart from when I last did one.
Yeah, sure.
But I do things like, okay, I can fireman carry one person. How about trying 2?
Sure.
You know, like it's a significant jump in effort, but that's like, okay, I can't find anyone heavier for me to carry. So I'm going to, you know, maybe it's 2 people. And then I'm like, wow, I can do 2 quite easily. Let me try a 3rd person. So I'm lifting far more by actually lifting people than I would ever dare to attempt if I was using like a bar or a yoke or anything like that. You see what I'm saying?
I do. You raise an interesting point because, you know, I've read somewhere where you've referred to the concept of that human beings are meant to be generalists in terms of physical performance, but yet a traditional training program would be based around the concept of focusing on specific training traits and trying to maximize those traits. So, you know, maybe can you expand on that idea of being generalist and how we move and work?
Well, yeah, so the SAID principle, you know, specific adaptation to impose demands, that's what most training programs focus on because, you know, I decide, okay, I want to get stronger. I want to get stronger with compound lifts. I measure, I implement a training program. I can see the end result being, yes, I'm stronger, right? And usually you have to train in that specific discipline to get better at it. There's no real way around that. Right? If I want to get stronger, I've got to train some type of strength program, regimen in order to get stronger. But humans are, in terms of specialisms of movement, humans are basically rubbish, my friend. I mean, when you compare ourselves to the rest of the animal kingdom, which is one of the reasons why I wrote the book Animal Moves, you know, a cheetah can outsprint us easily, right? Wild sheep can outsprint Usain Bolt. I mean, imagine sheep of all creatures can outsprint us. Camels can outsprint us. You know, ants can lift up to 100 times their body weight. We prize somebody who can lift, 3 or 4 times their body weight, and we're like, oh my gosh, they're really strong human beings. In compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, we're quite weak. We can't jump very far like a kangaroo or even a flea in comparison to their size, right? We can't swim as well as dolphins. We can't climb like monkeys. We are jack of all trades and masters of none. And when we recognize that, that actually gives us more power, because the reason why humans are so adept at being in charge of, or the top of the food chain when it comes to the rest of the animal kingdom, it's because of our flexibility to be able to adapt to the environment around us. So we can crawl, we can lift, we can carry, we can walk great distances, we can run, we can sprint, but just not as good in terms of specialists as other animals.
I see.
So that's why I believe that principle right there, that philosophy right there, means when we're training, we should train as humans. So i.e. we should be training as generalists, i.e. we should train those individual traits that we see in other animals, but we should recognize that we're not going to be the best sprinter in comparison to the animal kingdom. We can't out-sprint a wild goat, for example. So maybe we need to spend more time covering all the other bases. And so, something like CrossFit, which does talk about general preparedness in many respects and being more functionally capable, you still become really good at metabolic conditioning, Olympic lifting.
Sure.
Maybe
specialized skills.
Yeah, there's still specialized skills, even within that general sense. And so I feel we need to go back to basics, back to basic human movement patterns, your crawls, your walks, your run, your sprints, your lifts, your carries, lifting not being just using two hands with a particular grip on an Olympic bar, but lifting all manner of objects, which are real world objects. If you're running, you should be running on all types of terrain, maybe wearing minimalist shoes, maybe going barefoot. If you're climbing, again, all types of different terrain, not just a pull-up bar, maybe a wall, maybe do some bouldering,
Excellent.
So yeah.
I think what you're saying there starts to tie in kind of nicely with, I've got sort of 2 questions left because we're coming up on time. And the last question, second last question is about your book, Animal Moves, because you sort of talked there about looking at human movement patterns and human generalization in terms of movement and trying to improve in all of those parameters. But yet you've now written a book which is specifically about how some animals move and then trying to mimic those movements. How do you draw those two ideas together and integrate them?
So I think if you mimic the way animals move, then you're more likely to cover total body movements that you wouldn't normally cover in a conventional gym program, perhaps. You're likely to develop those components of fitness, i.e. strength, power, endurance, and so on, because some animals are more powerful than others, sure. Right? So some movements are more plyometric. So if I mimic a kangaroo, I'm going to be covering plyometric work. I'm going to be trying to jump great distances. It takes a significant amount of power effort in order to lift yourself off the ground, to beat gravity for a moment. If you can land softly and gracefully, you're going to be protecting your joints. So just trying to mimic an animal gives you so many benefits over and above burning some calories or just doing a different type of workout. Right? You're trying to embody the spirit of the animal. If I move like a cat, if I do a box jump, I can literally sound like a ball on a chain with a crane trying to smash this box. You've heard people do box jumps, and it's just like the amount of stress in their body, which isn't complementary, which isn't beneficial. I mean, they're literally fracturing their bones every time they jump on this and land on this box. But if a cat was to do so, they'd be landing very softly, very gracefully. But they have an awareness that they want to protect their joints, right? They want to protect their soft tissue. Humans are like, who cares about that? I can get knee replacements. If I get injured, I can get repaired. And animals, like, if I get injured, I might die. I may be susceptible to being predated, right? So we've lost that connection with ourselves, with our physicality. So it's not just looking like the animal, it's not just mimicking the animal, but it's embodying how they move, how graceful they are, how soft they land. The jump is not as important as the landing. The landing is far more important than the jump, right? In many respects. Our ability to decelerate is just as important as our ability to accelerate and to sprint really fast, because if you're running at max speed and you've got a tree that comes in the way or an obstacle comes in your way, there's no point going, well, at least I was really fast, right? It's like, yeah, I've got to be fast and avoid hazards and obstacles.
Sure.
So there were so many lessons to learn, very subtle messages, but by picking the animal kingdom, by picking different intensities, I have a program whereby you're going to get adequate rest and recovery. You're going to get adequate exposure to low, medium, high intensity, very high intensity. You're going to get exposure to flow-based, mindful-based movements, postures, dynamic and static, right through to expressing yourself in terms of maximal efforts, in terms of strength and power and speed. So it's almost an all-in-one program inspired by the animal kingdom that means if we train more like animals, we'll become more human. We'll become more generalists rather than focus on specialism. Yes. So, yeah. So, of course, I'm biased, but I think most of us recognize as kids, we would mimic animals. Part of playing, we pretend to be
other things,
other things, right? And by doing so, we are exploring movements that we wouldn't normally see other humans doing. You wouldn't see your parents crawling like a tiger, right? Oftentimes. But it enables us to explore the world around us in a different way on all fours, contralateral movement, quadrupedal movement. These movement patterns are important because as hunters, you would spend some time on all fours. Sure. It isn't just about playing. You're tracking animals. You've got to stay low, So there are functional benefits, there are practical benefits that we need to engage in the 21st century.
How about you share with us two of your favorite animal moves?
So one would be the catwalk. So the catwalk is just look at a cat walking on a fence. Very graceful, very feline, very balanced. They could walk on a railing very easily, almost effortless. And so the ideal place for me to attempt a catwalk would be on a railing of some sort. And trying to move that. Very, very tricky for sure, but requires a great, core stability, midline stability, great coordination, especially if you try to do it without gripping the bar. So if you literally just use your palms, oh my goodness, it's very, very tough. Just taking a couple of steps. Yeah, it helps you to appreciate what other animals have to do.
So start on a low fence then, eh?
Yeah, start on a very low fence or start on the ground, right? Sure. But just try to start on the ground, but just try to walk in a straight line, being very relaxed and very composed. That would be the first. And the second is something I call a flea jump.
Okay.
So it's almost like being in a boxed plank position, like all fours, like in a bear crawl, stationary bear crawl position. I call it a bear pose. And then plyometrically pushing yourself off your hands and feet at the same time.
So straight upwards.
Straight up and landing softly. It sounds easy, but it's more difficult than, say, doing like a plyometric push-up or clap. That it's very, very tough. And you have to make sure, again, that you're pushing off at the same time, hands and feet, and landing hands and feet, and very, very soft when you land, because you don't want to be breaking your wrists, or damaging your wrists. So those would be my two go-to movements for people to try out for the first time.
Oh, great stuff. I appreciate that. It's been fun sort of picking your brain and exploring these concepts. Darryl, if you were to go back to investment banker Darryl from 18 years old ago, and you had one piece of advice you would give him to conclude with, what would you say to Darryl of 18 years ago?
I would say just consider your health state based on what you're doing now. That would be it. Just asking myself that question would have meant that I wouldn't have ended up having that test telling me things are going wrong.
You would have been able to move forward on this path, perhaps at a more appropriate rate then.
More appropriate rate, and probably maybe I wouldn't have left investment banking. Maybe I would have continued, but I would have had much more moderation around what's important. Would I have made decisions to only have 2 or 3 hours sleep a night? Because I can make more money. right?
Yeah.
Where actually I probably would have been more productive if I got more quality sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have been as stressed out. I wouldn't have been as crazed with my friends and family because I was always on edge. You know, I'd have had better relationships. So would have been so many benefits of being able to blend some of the healthier lifestyle and well-being traits into my pretty manic life back then.
Well, that's good advice, and I think that's great advice to finish on. For all those who are listening, go away and consider your health status, and for those who work with clients, consider the health status of your clients and what you can do to positively benefit them. Darryl, it's been so great to have you on the show. I really appreciate your time. Of course, in all the show notes, we were going to link you up with your website, all your various social media links. I would really encourage everyone who's watching and listening to connect with Darryl, and particularly to check out his books. And his latest release being Animal Moves. So Darryl, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Ben. You've been a pleasure. You've been a great host.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share via social media. You can also rate the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. If you'd like to know more about us, then check out our range of online courses at www.nordicfitnesseducation.com.